I know this is quite vogue at the minute. Some people are talking like media mix modeling or marketing mix modeling. Would you say that you're currently doing more of like an MMM model here?
Yeah, so I think that's like the next phase in the story in a sense, right?
Yeah.
So we had started building out experimentation as the core capability, and I still say it today. The most important thing we can do as a sort of a data science team or a measurement science team is to support experimentation because there's this truthiness kind of scale in a sense, right? And real RCTs are at the top,
Yeah.
randomized control trials, but no one controls enough pieces to do real RCTs, like full stop. And like, that's fine, right? Like, I want the drugs that I need to make myself better. I want those to go through RCTs, but it's probably a little bit too expensive for just in the media landscape. But then you can sort of get to sort of quasi experimentation slash causality, and we think about geo experiments, pulse experiments, or switchback experiments as they're sometimes called. And so that is like the next layer of scaling that out. We had a very talented engineer who came up with a new switchback experiment methodology inside of Canva. And so that allowed us to do experimentation on channels where we couldn't do geographic splits. And that's just where you pulse, you turn the channel on and then off, on and then off, and then you use that with an add stock curve to try and estimate its incrementality. As we were doing that, we were getting the media tables and stuff like that ready to go into an MMM. And so that's when Canva started exploring into getting into a marketing mix model. And I think I had heard at the beginning of this, it's a 2-year journey to sort of go from having an idea and then like getting your first continuously running report. And I was just like, sure, I can do it faster. And the reality is that it maybe it didn't take 2 years, but it definitely took more than a year to sort of go through that entire process because you just have to change so much of the way you organize the data in your organization to get it to that point. And it took us a while to sort of get everything to that point. But one of the advantages of having experimentation is you don't need the same rigor around cleaning of all of the data to get experimentation up. And so
Yep.
you can start with incrementality testing very early on and owning that yourself. Then you have all of these elasticities of these channel investments that you can then use to calibrate. And so one of the real powerful things about the system that we've developed is that we have the MMM, which is like a large hierarchical regression, right? Like it's
Yeah.
just a fancy regression, okay? I understand some people talk about it how it's an operating system or it's like some black box, but it's just a big fancy regression. And all that's happening is it's trying to guess the media investments across all of your tactics. And don't get me wrong, there was this great analogy that I heard at Facebook, which applied to attribution modeling, but I think it is true for market mix modeling as well, which is sort of media modeling is kind of like cooking a steak. If you start with like some wagyu, really good T-bone cut or something like that, there's only a couple ways you can cook that to break it. Like most of the ways you're going to cook that, it's going to be a really nice meal at the end, right? But if you start with the cheapest rump meat in the entire world, like there's only a couple of ways you can cook that to actually making it into a nice meal. Data quality really matters. And what's great about having an experimentation program is that you causally get these curves of the relationship between daily spend and the value brought to the business. And then you can take those curves and you can calibrate your MMM. So your MMM has to do less guessing around the investments. And your job as a measurement science team is to basically come in and try and like put as much calibration as possible into that model so that it has to guess as few points as possible. So you're starting with a more accurate base model. And the thing is like you also just need the experience. You need to build up the muscle of like understanding how to do the categorizations of your channels and tactics. And there's an entire other category of like how do you estimate what is the value input that you put into the model to optimize towards. Just because there's an entire part of the team that just builds sort of like this value estimation system because Canva's business is very far away from somewhere that sells socks on the internet. Like we do technically sell socks on the internet. You can go to canva.com and design something and then have it stitched onto a sock. However, socks are not our core business. It's empowering the world to design, and how you take people who are empowered to design and then value the cost of the ad investment is really like its own sort of piece of science in a sense.